Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie and Andrew here for another week of Husky hockey recaps and previews. We got a barn burner of a recap here to go over with North Dakota. Lovely Fighting Hawks coming into town. Could have been a better weekend for the Huskies when it comes to the scoreboards. 5-3 loss on Friday, a 3-3 tie on Saturday. They did pick up the extra point in the shootout. A little bit of a reversal from the Bob Motzko days when we wouldn't be able to buy a shootout goal. And then we'll talk a little bit about the women. St. Thomas, as their quest for home ice hits a big speed bump after a 3-1 victory and then a 5-1 loss. 3 empty netters, but still, that's something that is going to be a big hurdle, losing and to try to make up those points. But let's kick off here with the North Dakota series, and starting it off. And I'm just going to come in with kind of a hot fire, spitfire take. I'm not impressed with North Dakota, and I'll just say it. It's not that I don't think they were that good per se, but you look at them 3 in the pairwise and haven't lost in regulation and how long. God, they were lucky to get out of the herb without a loss, hanging on there. And I think it was a little bit more of some problems with the Huskies than how good North Dakota is. And I really want to see them later in the season because I think we're going to hand it to them later on.
I wish I could be more confident. It's I agree that I wasn't necessarily blown away by North Dakota this weekend, but I guess what overtook that emotion was that these are 2 games that really got away from the Huskies, and I was more disappointed in the lack of not just getting one win. You could have won both of these games. I think St. Cloud had the better of North Dakota overall in the weekend. Yep. On 5-on-5. And it was especially Saturday when you had 3 separate 1-goal leads in that game, to let that slip away, in the last couple of goals being some defensive lapses and some ugly goals for North Dakota. But even on Friday, I thought there was that one stretch in the first period on Friday where North Dakota controlled play in their zone, offensive zone, for an extended period. But other than that, I thought St. Cloud really kind of dictated play and dictated possession, but they just weren't able to convert on the chances. And North Dakota was able to pounce on the mistakes that St. Cloud made. And so overall, a frustrating weekend because certainly should have gotten a 3-pointer out of one of these 2 games, and very easily could have gotten the majority, or if not 6 points this weekend. I think if you just cleaned up things a little bit better. We'll get into all what went wrong, but there's a lot to analyze, and they were entertaining games, I think, but at the same time frustrating. An extension from last Saturday in Denver, where I think you played well enough to win that game, if not for some bad mistakes and some hopefully areas of the game where you can clean things up. I don't think that all is lost, and you have been able to salvage some points in the last 2 weekends, but not getting a full win, definitely puts a crimp in the ability to win the Penrose, for instance.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's just the ability to put teams away of this caliber. I'm not completely sold that St. Cloud is how well they're going to do in that task. And if this is a team that we're thinking has NCAA aspirations, these are the types of teams that you're going to have to play in the postseason, and, getting close, but not quite getting over the hump against these teams. It's not going to, you don't really get the points for trying when it comes to NCAA time. So I hope that this team can learn from these games but certainly some things to clean up, and I suppose we can get into that.
And that's where maybe why I'm a little bit more optimistic is because, minus some defensive lapses and, goaltending where Bassey's glove has to make a save, we're taking away 6 points this weekend, like flat out. That's just kind of what I look at that it comes down to. And that's maybe why it's a little bit frustrating, because if you go back to prior to the Denver series, when I was talking about how the strength of this team is really in their defense, I think that aggressiveness and the speed that these two teams have played with really showed some of the gaps in the defensive spacing that they live in, the lanes that, they were able to make that seeing eye pass through our defense and able to create some of those chances and ended up in the back of the net. If we clean those up, like I said, if we just need to clean those up, and then I think we're going to be good, for the rest of the season and able to make a run. But it's, proven that we can make those adjustments is going to be key here coming down the stretch.
I agree with that. I think we both said at the beginning of the season that we thought defense was the strength of this team. To this point, I could say that as a unit, the defense has been sort of a letdown from what we had expectations for. But I would say, for me, the more troubling unit right now is goaltending. And with Bassey, and it sounds like this weekend Posh was not available, according to the radio guys who said that he suffered some sort of injury, upper body injury.
Yep.
Which
Larson said on his radio show that it was during the save last game, some save during the third period, tweaked an upper body injury, and said he's
Denver.
week to week. So it sounds like he's probably not going to be available for Omaha,
which I think is a bummer.
Yeah.
I was, after the first period on Friday, I was like, let's get Posh in this game. Like, let's pull him now instead of like giving up a third goal and then pulling Bassey. But then that's kind of when I learned that Posh was not available. Who knows what the health of James Gray is, but you're really not going to go to an unproven guy who's never seen an actual game in college at this point. So we might be stuck with Bassey, and that doesn't give me any confidence at all.
No.
And so I agree the defense needs to be shored up, particularly on Saturday. The last two goals were just kind of like, you're tearing your hair out. Just like, how are these goals getting in? I know the first one's Ewert's trying to make a play, and it's kind of a lucky bounce for North Dakota. The second one is just how many chances to get that puck out of the zone, and somehow it squirts in, and that being the game time goal is a real backbreaker. But it's I don't know. Bassey's numbers are okay. I mean, they're better than Person's. If I'll agree with anything that you said about North Dakota this weekend, I'm just really not impressed with Person. I thought he was a rebound machine on Friday, and the fact that St. Cloud wasn't able to take advantage of more of those opportunities was another reason that they failed to win one of these games this weekend. Cleaned up some of the trash, but not enough of it. And for his benefit, in contrast to Bassey, because I thought both goalies kind of played poorly on Friday. Person was just less bad, and to his credit, he made more first saves. There was a couple that Bassey didn't make the first save, 4 of them, namely, and all whizzing by up top, which is I think a common theme. Of this show.
I think we've pointed that out a couple of times. I will give him a pass on that last one from Cameron Burke, because that again, spacing and covering lanes and whatnot for the defense, that went by 3 Huskies, that pass for, to get Cameron Burke, who was, one of their top goal scorers. Coons was able to make a nice play, to kind of get back on his forehand, pull it back, find a lane. But I mean, that pass can't be made. So I'll give Bassey a pass on that one.
Sure. I'm done giving passes. Like, yeah, I mean, Bassey made some good saves too. Sure. Overall, he played poorly.
Yeah.
And he was the main reason that they lost. And so it's I think a trouble spot at this point, especially if he's the ride or die at this point. And so,
I mean, yeah, I mean, 4 goals on 16 shots is just not going to do it.
Not going to cut it.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Cut it.
I do agree. Also, Pearson was, I think, crowned a little bit too much when talking about how many magnificent saves that he made. Because I mean, yeah, and it was just like, you know, you can give him the one on Werner, that 2-on-1. At the same time,
he helped him out by flinging it right into his glove.
Yeah, you got to get that elevated a little bit. You can't keep that shot low on a one-timer. But the 2 other saves that everyone was saying that he was standing on his head and whatnot, I think one was Sahlquist and Hall, maybe Clark. I can't remember which one it was. But there were 2 of them, one in the first and then one in the second, that, you know, we had no angle at. So you're off to the side with no angle, and then all of a sudden, you know, yeah, your person's, you know, glove and whatnot is there covering a good portion, considering the no angle that you get to shoot at. It is what it is. I mean, it's like, yeah, he was there to make a save, but you didn't have a lot to shoot at, and you're under pressure and everything along those lines. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I didn't think Pearson was that good. I still don't think he's that good. Still think he's an overrated goaltender. I don't think North Dakota is as good as their pairwise seems to indicate. I thought, like we said, the Huskies were able to control a majority of the play. We were able to enter the zone fairly easily. And they were really passive, which I thought was really surprising. Like, Denver really caused us trouble by an aggressive forecheck, and North Dakota a little bit more was just kind of playing a 1-2-2 passive, and we were able to enter the zone fairly easily and, you know, create some chances. But I don't know. It was just that there was no instance of like, I'm really worried about this North Dakota team. And again, even though we did only get 2 points on the weekend, I'd like another crack at them.
Yeah, I think it's really that top line. I mean, I guess that Berg too, his line was tough for the Huskies this weekend with some key goals. But yeah, we mentioned last weekend one of the best teams in the country as far as preventing shots. North Dakota, I think, like averaging 24 shots a game, somewhere in that ballpark. Huskies with 37 and 35 shots in these games. One of them was in overtime, but I believe the Huskies only got 1 shot in that overtime session.
Only shot in overtime, yeah.
I mean, so they were generating more offense and more sustained pressure than North Dakota generally has seen all year. And again, I agree that gives me some hope that you do stack up to this team somewhat favorably. But then I look at the results here and said, well, yeah, it's 2 winnable games and you didn't win one of them. And so it's more St. Cloud shooting themselves in the foot than it is me being completely wowed by North Dakota. But it just, you never were able to put them away. The second game, the first goal that St. Cloud scores, what is it, 9 seconds later, I think it was.
It was.
Blake walks down and ties it. And again, getting up 2-1 and 3-2. Both of those leads being in the third period, weren't able to hold those leads as well. And so it was a frustrating weekend, even though it could have certainly been worse, but could have been a lot better as well. And as a result, you're tied top pairwise, although North Dakota holds a tiebreaker. And so squandered first place. The season's not done, though. It's similar to what I'm going to say about the Huskies women's team here as well. Not a good weekend for them either. And it's caused me to lose confidence in their ability to, let's say, make the NCAA tournament. But there is still enough time, and there's still the opportunity with the schedule ahead for both the men and the women that these teams can still not only make the tournament, but have a decent run in said tournament. So I'm not giving up complete hope. I feel that we're close. It's just like there's a finishing aspect that this team is missing, and let's hope that they get it quickly. Because we should too say, I mean, it's 2 weekends in a row with Denver and North Dakota. Yes, you're clearly a little down on North Dakota, but looking at the pairwise, these are 2 high pairwise teams. And so the fact that you're able to go to overtime in two of these games, and at least the one Denver game you got away from it, but the other loss in there too, that was a competitive game as well. I mean, you're playing with these teams. It's just something else, something, either one unit, like you're mentioning, some defensive lapses, if it's the goaltending, if it's power play continuing to struggle, whatever the case may be, it's just something's off. But I think they're close. So I'm going to still maintain some optimism, but there are some troubling signs, and let's hope we can see some improvement from those trouble spots in weeks to come.
So we've got, I touched on, the first goal on Friday, a Pike's goal right off the face-off. That one was just frustrating, and a backbreaker at the end of the period.
You were at the game on Friday.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct.
I was standing above section 103 on Friday. Is where I
so you would have been pretty close to the Pike goal.
Correct. Yep.
On that side of the ice, because the TV feed, they missed it.
Yep.
Because they were doing a replay, and even their replay of the goal, it was like from the back, a bad angle, so I couldn't really tell. Just kind of like a harmless looking shot. What went on there? I'm sure you had a better angle than I did.
Yeah, it was obviously a set play, but McLaughlin won the face-off to Blake, who passed it back to Pike, and Pike just corked a shot, and it was just able to seeing eye shot. It was able to get through a little bit of traffic. But I tweeted out that I think Bassey goes down before the shot even came. It was like
he's doing that several times throughout the game,
and it was like all of a sudden it was, because the way I saw him wind up, I felt like Bassey was already on his way down, and that's why I'm surprised in the shootout on Saturday they just didn't rip it high, because that was going to be the case. But thankfully they didn't. So that's a backbreaker. But Huskies were able to respond early with Salquist's goal, which was really nice play by Kupka, and really able to kind of come in a little bit of a Gretzky circle, but kind of a blind pass as well. Able to find Salquist, who was able to bury it after being stuffed in the first period. So it was good to see a goal there. But then it's the special teams. It was just kind of frustrating to watch this penalty kill. Really get dismantled over this past 2 weekends. Both, North Dakota had 2 goals on Friday on the power play, and then on Saturday we let in a shorthanded goal, I believe, didn't we? Or was that also on Fridays? Do we let in a shorty or not?
No special teams goals on Saturday for either side. So, according to CHN, at least.
That's right. We didn't commit a penalty because we had. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. But yeah. Oh, it was a breakaway. The chance that was stuffed. That's right. Okay. Yep. So it was. But yeah, that 2 for 3 on the power play. For Blake and Berg getting those goals, and it was just incredibly frustrating to watch us kind of have those breakdowns where the defense wasn't covering their lanes that they should have, and they were kind of always able to get that. We would kind of come back, make it to a 1-goal game, and then they would counter punch, and we were always kind of that one step behind. I was a little surprised there towards the end when we, pulled the goalie with about 6 minutes left. And then we drew a penalty and then put the goalie back in, which was, I thought, kind of an interesting move down too. But, the theory is that you're on the power play so they could ice it, have free reign to try to get an empty netter. But put him in, and it ended up working out with Vitti. Ended up getting his 100th career point. and getting a goal there. But unfortunately, it was just a little bit too little, too late. A little bit of JoJo with empty net for Jammernick, and that was all that she wrote there on Friday's game. And it was just just being there in North Dakota. I was a little bit surprised at the attendance was only about 4,500 on Friday, 5,500 on Saturday, so a full 1,000 people, more on Saturday. But it was supposed to be a whiteout, so I went and I didn't have a white jersey or any white SCSU stuff, so I went to Shields. I bought a new white jersey because I was in the market for one anyway. And then I go and it's like, yeah, there's hardly anyone. Like the whole whiteout thing was a big swing and a miss, which I was actually really kind of worried about it because you're doing it up against North Dakota when they travel well. So it's like, it's almost kind of a worse luck, but instead it was just a mishmash because it was so cold and everyone was just had coats and hats on anyway. So nothing was white, but on the way back, on the bus, just you had all these North Dakota fans and they're doing their whole shtick and whatnot, and they're just talking about how they've got such a stud for a goaltender and they're going to go all the way, and I'm just like, I just don't see it with this team. I was like, go ahead with your hubris and your excitement and whatnot, but I think the season ends badly for them.
I just don't quite see it there with Person, but it's been a narrative that's been cooked up ever since they plucked him out of the portal. Ever since years before that too.
Yeah, even with Miami.
Terrible years of Miami, but though can't look at the numbers. It's one like annoyance I have with goalie stats. If the stats are good, trust the stats. Look at him; he's elite. If they're not good, well, you don't know the whole story. Yeah. It's context dependent. It's just a way to never really use any objective numbers to grade goaltenders, which goaltending stats are a bit fickle, but I can use the eye test, and he was, like I said, kicking out rebounds left and right on Friday. The last two goals for St. Cloud on Saturday, I thought pretty weak. The Ashan goal that kind of kicked off the skate and in. And then the third goal was, I thought, a savable goal for him as well. So, yeah, if that's what you're hanging your hat on, he's not Eddie Belfour, is what I'm saying. But I mean, he can win you a game, but I don't think he's anything special, and the numbers sort of bear that out. Whether or not you want to take great assault with that or not, been a below average goalie by the numbers this year. Yeah. And the Huskies just kind of played into his hand, which is unfortunate. So we're only to blame for adding to the mystique. So
the mystique, yeah. Switching over to Saturday, I thought a good, really solid performance by the Huskies. Kupka gets the goal on a nice pass from Lidke, and then 9 seconds later, it was Blake, and I just tweeted out at that time, I was like, WTF, Peart, and I don't know where I'm at with him, because he is touted as to be this incredible puck moving defenseman, and I'm just looking at the plays that sometimes he makes. He has some butt clenching, moments. That one was just a terrible turnover to their best player. And then you look and he's buried with 7 points on the season. So like you're looking at him, it's like, I don't know what he actually brings to the table at this point. Maybe I expected him to be a Jack Ashan 2.0, or maybe I expected him to be maybe a little bit faster or whatnot. But just watching him, I'm like, I just don't see it. And I'm also looking at him as a Wild fan too, and just being like, well, this is not going to be a guy that's going to be, he's like a I don't know, discount Louis Belpedio is kind of what I guess I kind of see as him.
I've been saying these things for 3 years with Peart, so I'm glad that at least the middle is catching up to where I'm at, let's say. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of given up. I feel bad because I feel like I'm kind of ragging on him too much. So it just comes with the territory. He's become the player that when I feared in the first year, which I called a bust, to your sort of gasp after his freshman year, he really hasn't improved much from that. So I don't feel like I want to beat a dead horse. Same with like Bassie. I feel like I'm getting close to that. Like we're saying the same thing with him getting beat high all the time. Like how many times do we need to say it? It's sort of obvious. It's the standard that I think of for Bassie now. With Peart, the standard is it's gonna be he's gonna cough up a bad turnover to spring a opponent with a grade A scoring chance like twice a weekend, something like that. Like it just comes with the territory. So
and
I wish he could. I wish he could.
You should have the upside too. You should have the balancing aspect.
Last year he had 20 some points, and he was able to offset some of that defensive floppiness with some offense. He's not exactly doing that to the extent that he was last year. Yeah. And I don't know, as far as his pro prospects are concerned, Billy the gunslinger, not all of those draft picks have been stellar. Who's the Strammel from Wisconsin? Does he have a point this year? His first round draft pick from last year? I know he was benched for a while and for being unproductive and hurt, I think too. But not everything that he's that he's been picking up there have turned into gold. So this might add to that pile, but we shall see.
So it's 1-1 after, again, a great first period by the Huskies, but coming out 1-1 felt like a loss. Those were the chances where you needed to extend that to, an actual lead going into the second period.
17-4 shot advantage.
Yeah. So second period rolls along, fairly uneventful until Sean puts it away, like you said, a little bit of a kind of a weird weak goal, a 5-hole, but more deflects off the skate. But they don't ask how, they ask how many. So
nice pass by Okabe.
Okabe's pass was wonderful, and really, I thought Okabe all weekend was, he had a little bit of motor in him. And I think he was.
I'll be touching on Okabe later. Hint, hint.
So, that pass was really good. And then, third period. And this is where I got really frustrated with Bassie and, the play were for, Levinage trying to pass it and it can deflect it. I think it was off Ewert's stick.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, Bassie, why are you swimming out that far? Like, what are you doing? Like, he's way out of position. If I was playing it in the video game, I would think the goalie would be glitching or that it was some kind of computer rubber banding effect to try to get the game close again. But like, just to see him slide out that far, I think a little bit of the problem right now is that Bassie just doesn't trust the defense, because the defense has been burned a couple times by some of those backdoor or slip passes, or
that could be.
And he tried to overcompensate for that. And then, of course, if he would have just stayed put, it would have been an easy cover, and we'd still have the lead. Instead,
he's looking at Person across the ice, and he's got the Superman cape, and he's like, "I got to put the Superman cape on. He's Superman. I got to be better than Superman." So it's a too tall of a task. Just calm down, just play your game, and don't try to do too much.
And then Huskies was able to get that lead back, and that was VD's goal. Drop pass from Werner was able to beat Pearson clean. Maybe a little bit of a screen. I know Kupka, I think, was crashing the net at that time. Maybe that distracted a little bit, but that was VT shot, maybe a little bit of a weak goal given up, but all of a sudden, again, you got a 3-2 lead. It's time to buckle down and close this game out. And just the period kind of goes on, and then you get this scrum for Cameron Berg was able to bank it off the back of him. And again, this is another instance, like Passy was out of position, like way out there. And it's just like, if you got to just tend the goal. And I know it was a scrum, and I know everyone was kind of flopping around, and you got to trust your defense to get it out of there, but you still also kind of have to stay in your position, because if you weren't out back that far, it wouldn't have banked in. And that's where it was frustrating to seeing those 2 goals back to back after being, just beaten so many times clean on Friday. It was just, it was exhausting. It was frustrating, especially when I thought, overall we played really well. It's just these breakdowns they were able to capitalize on. And we ended up tying. Don't want to touch on overtime because we didn't touch the puck. But we were able to kind of hang on for dear life, and then 2 good goals to win the shootout. So, but this whole stretch, 4 points out of 12 against the top 2 teams. It's not great. It's not terrible, but I still like, for the most part, how we played against those 4 teams. We just need to sharpen some of the defense up. We still have a lot of freshmen, but at the same time, this is where this learning curve starts to kind of get a little bit easier, and you're starting to get a little bit more on track, and notice these things, notice these assignments, and not let these passes get through. And that's what definitely the Huskies need to work on. That obviously, along with the special teams, after they got beaten so badly over the last 2 weekends.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's mixed, lots of mixed emotions, because I feel like they played really well 5-on-5 against this team, played really well against Denver 5-on-5 on last Saturday as well, and feeling like if you're good at 5-on-5, I'm confident that you can at least, make a run as a competent team, whether or not that means an NCAA tournament run or at least just an appearance. Gives me confidence that you're one of the best, 12 to 14 teams in the country, which is going to get you into the dance, which is all that's really important. But it's just, it is bittersweet, especially coming at the hands of North Dakota. I mean, couldn't have happened. You could have lost those points this weekend to a more gracious opponent, and to give up first place in the conference as well to boot stings even more. But there's opportunities.
Yeah,
the season's not done, and we're going in a stretch here, 3 straight weekends against bottom half of the conference teams. You can certainly right the ship, and I hope that the team will take it as a learning experience and learn from it. And let's hopefully that some health is going to improve as well for some key players and key contributors as well. But I don't know. You were kind of hinting that you think that a lot of the fans seem to be hopeless after this weekend. I guess I'm more optimistic than that, which, coming from me, should be surprising. Maybe I don't feel like all is lost. What do you feel like?
Well, judging by the questions that we'll get to later in the podcast, a lot of people are saying that like this is like we're dead in the water.
I don't get that. I would feel that if this team still has, the last 3 games against the last game against Denver and these 2 against North Dakota, I think you were the better team 5-on-5. This team is a very skilled, quick team. And I feel like it was somewhat fortunate for North Dakota to come out with 4 out of 6 points this weekend, because they sort of pounced on the mistakes that St. Cloud was handing them. And in turn, St. Cloud wasn't pouncing on the mistakes that North Dakota was giving them. But I feel like those are margin kind of plays. Whereas the bulk of the game, I think you were in control. I didn't look at the fancy stats for the game, but I would imagine St. Cloud had the majority of even strength shot attempts for both games. And so that gives me the most hope. It'd be one thing if kind of, like the St. Cloud women's team, like winning that game against Ohio State, like that's not sustainable. Like winning a game where you're outshot 3-1, but losing games where you're dictating play 5-on-5 and you're having the majority of scoring chances, that seems more of a sustainable formula than having to kind of rely on puck luck and like Duluth-esque type of play in order to win the day for you. So that gives me hope. And I guess we'll see this weekend and the next few at that is like, can you make a statement against teams that are lower than you in the standings? And we shall see this weekend. I don't want to get too ahead of us. I don't know if you have any last thoughts about the Fighting Green and your undying love for them, because I'm sure you said that bus ride, they were so gracious and just shaking hands and saying, great game, guys, great game.
And they said Fighting that's what they're known for so many times too. They did not
they
say
correctly
any
said
other
the name of
nickname
their
that's
nickname.
been dead for 10 years. So it's nope, they were gracious. They were all over that.
It's very sober. Sober fan base. They're like Mormons.
At least that's money going into the athletic.
All right, let's put them into the rink fund.
Yeah,
exactly. Build that new refrigeration system.
But I just kind of want to touch on, because Joe Molinar was out for undisclosed health reasons. It sounded like it was either some kind of a food poisoning or flu bug or whatnot, or stomach bug that hit. It sounds like he couldn't keep anything down or in. So, Jack Rogers playing with Salquist and Kupka on that line. I didn't see too much from Jack Rogers on the weekend.
It's a penalty that he took right away in the first period. He seems to do that a lot, taking a lot of dumb penalties. Seems to be like his main contribution team right now. Yeah, there was some new faces, relatively speaking. We saw Nick Ports. Ports lives. He's back.
Didn't do much, but he's back.
Didn't do much. I mean, we mentioned Ewert. It's not like he's been in the lineup every game for the Huskies. Ashan had been out. There was a bit of was it an illness or a tweaked injury with him? Do you have like a full injury? Because I watched the Saturday game late, and so I sort of missed all the ins and outs. Like I picked up who was playing, like Ports, but I don't. So you're mentioned. So Molinar was out. Who else would have been subbed in and out for those other players this weekend? Who am I missing?
Well, Barrett Hall didn't play on Saturday.
Okay, was there a reason for that?
Barrett Hall is also nursing an injury.
Okay, he didn't play that. One of the games in Denver. I think one of the games in Denver he didn't play either. So it's kind of maybe a nagging injury for him.
Yeah, he didn't play the first game against Denver.
Okay.
So, so Grant Deshawn is back. Nick Ports was in for Jack Ryman, who played on Friday. And I think, there was one instance where Ryman, I think it was on the first goal, he didn't get back quick enough. So
we feel that's just a scratch.
I think that was maybe a little bit more of a scratch to get.
Would that been the same with Ewert in for Falk? Would that have just been let's get this guy some action?
I think so. I think and really I think Ewert's been playing really well, so get him some more experience. Overall.
Yeah, so we don't seem like there's huge monumental injuries, but a lot of nicks and bruises and illnesses, and it's kind of been like that all year. There's just been guys one game out because of that and tweaks, and let's like knock on wood that there's not going to be a torn ACL popping up here. But at the same time, these little nagging injuries too can create some minor roster headaches as well. So it's good to get the injury report. So thank you for that.
Yeah, but it's also, good to kind of see. And then I bet like the KVSE guys, if they're listening, they're going to be screaming, they probably know all of it. So I should probably just ask them before.
Well, you should. Yeah.
using my sources and whatnot.
Cover the team. Yeah.
So
we're just two dudes with mics. That's all we're not qualified.
We're not qualified for anything. But I mean, you're not going to take a coin out for how he's playing as of late. I think him and Gross.
I thought Ingram was pretty good this weekend too. Actually, just playmaking. And I don't think he had a point on the weekend, but he was noticeable in terms of when he had the puck and what he was doing with it. I liked how he played this weekend.
Yep. Yeah, a shootout goal.
That's right.
So, who you got then for the POW?
Well, I teased it earlier, but long time coming. I think it's his first POW of the year for me, but Zach Okabe thought had a good weekend. Playmaking. We've mentioned last week, like he must really get up for North Dakota because probably played his best series of the year this weekend and getting a goal, a couple of assists, mentioned that long stretch pass to set up the Ashan goal on Saturday. And just with the amount of chances that he had, I mean, he could have had more than 3 points. I mean, the kind of grade A opportunities, looks he was getting. But like I said, there wasn't a ton of like obvious candidates. And I think Okabe would have led the team with points this weekend with 3. So maybe that's the lazy pick, but I'll go with it. Mentioned kind of Ingram played well. I thought Anhorn was all right as far as the defense goes. I thought he was pretty solid. Didn't consider Bassey for this position this weekend, but Salquist I think had a good weekend as well. Kupka, a couple of playmaking, a couple of assists for him. So I mean, like I said, this is an offense that generated 70 plus shots this weekend, and so I think you got to spread a lot of the credit for that around the forwards. And I'm just gonna pick Okabe. Hopefully it's a good sign that he's got the monkey off the back, and the last stretch run here of the regular season, he's really gonna kind of come to play with what we were thinking was gonna be the his big senior season this year. Let's hope 5th year season, I should say. Yeah. But it was a good sign that he was able to have a impactful weekend. Who you got?
Yep. Even before the weekend, I just tweeted out, career stats versus UND, and Okabe had 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points. VT had 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points. So, I mean, those were your 2 leaders, and they were the ones that kind of continued to beat North Dakota. So I did also pick Okabe. I really think his presence, and even I was about, in the first period, about halfway through the first period, just watching him play and just how much he was on the puck and he got up for the game. I was like, I think he's going to score. Like, it was just something that you can kind of, as you were watching him, you kind of could sense that it was going to come. And obviously it came at a big time. But overall, I really liked his play. So, yeah, he was my POW. And maybe we're all going to be a little bit boring because Go Huskies Woo also went with Okabe. He also said, I didn't think anyone really impressed him this weekend. Does like Ryman, but thought he was strong when he was on the ice. He said, I thought Peart was less of a downward roller coaster and more solid. So I think we are very much different of opinion from Go Huskies Woo on Peart.
That's the one thing about Peart. He generates the biggest diversity of opinions about his play. Yeah. Some people think he's great. Some people think he sucks. And anywhere in between. It's kind of fascinating. Yeah. The reaction arc of his career.
Anhorn was up and down and thought Bassey was just playing tight. And I can see that aspect of he wasn't like he felt like he had to be perfect. So he tried to do a little bit more than he should have. And Salquist was good, but this is his ceiling. Good on the dot. Fortuitous at times. Shoot at the goalie's belly button. So
or right in the middle of the pad.
Right in the
He's
middle
good
of the
at
pad. Right in the middle, which, I mean, on his goal from Kupka, right in the middle of the net was absolutely perfect. We were able to get that one. Right in the middle of the net, anywhere else, not so much. So, but, you know, the big thing, my big takeaway, too, is when I look at this and I see Reese Graber not on the score sheet at all.
Yeah.
And you would have told me a week ago that Gaber was not going to score a point, I would have said this is a 6-point weekend. Like I don't. You shut him down, that's good, but you know, their two other school scorers was kind of able to kind of come up and bite you with Berg and obviously Blake, who's had a strong season. So. But you know, as we turn the page, Bob Seger style over to Omaha, it's and now that's in everyone's head, that saxophone solo. So you're welcome. It is a kind of an interesting turn of events here because they've also played North Dakota and Denver back to back. So we've got kind of an interesting comparison on those two, you know, with us playing Omaha and them coming off the same kind of series. Omaha beat North Dakota in overtime on their first game and then lost on the next game and then got swept at home against Denver last weekend. And right now Omaha is really down there, sitting in 7th place right now in the Nacho standings. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic because I have always been maybe a little more bullish on Omaha. And I think this is going to be kind of an interesting weekend for, you know, kind of a chance to make up some of those points that we've dropped against North Dakota and Denver, because those two teams, I believe, play each other this weekend. So, so kind of here's your chance against a team who's sitting 7th in the conference to really kind of bury them and kind of cement yourself into the upper portion of the NCHC.
Yeah, Omaha's been sinking like a rock down to the bottom of the standings, and you know, the last couple weekends they've been really up against the wind. But come Friday,
for
they
all
can say,
you Gen Zers listening, go on Spotify or whatever you use and search Bob Seger song titles.
It's
so,
Seger. It's just one E before the G.
And if you know the Silver Bullet Band too, you know that's
you
okay.
could even go back to the Bob Seger System. That was his first group, and so
I wouldn't go back.
Actually, I think Bob Seger is kind of underrated. He's got a lot of good songs, and he kind of doesn't really get it. He's not really in the pantheon, I feel, but he's got some bangers. But
yeah. Well, where are you at with Catmandu?
Catmandu, it's a good one. So yeah, I don't know if I think I'm out of Seger puns for Omaha hockey, but that was a decent run.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, when I kind of fired up the standings and seeing them lose two games against Denver this last weekend, and yeah, I was kind of surprised looking at the standings. One regulation win in conference all year for them, kind of propped up by all these overtime wins that they've been able to notch, which thank goodness for those, because if they didn't have those, they'd be really scrapping it with Miami for the toilet bowl. But I think they're a better team than 1-7-4. Is what 1-7-0-4 and 0 would indicate.
Their one conference win.
Yeah, randomly in Denver,
where
they never win.
So
yeah, that's a nice.
That was the
rescheduled 2-period game in Denver after the ice crapped out. Yeah. So able to take advantage of that.
They must have had some night moves that game.
Down on Main Street.
Oh yeah.
We've got tonight.
We've got tonight, and I don't know
they were not a beautiful loser that game.
I don't know how I can toss in "You'll Accompany Me," but
that was on my mind too. But I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna.
That one's a little bit tougher. Anyway, Bob Seger.
We're done. Seriously, we're done.
And yet this whole time we're not talking about old time rock and roll, which is probably number one on his.
Makes me dance in my whitey tighties like Tom Cruise.
Right. For all you Gen Zers out there, Tom Cruise was a movie star in the 80s. This is pre-Mission Impossible days. Risky business.
Okay. All right.
So,
I think we've got it all cleaned out of our
Omaha.
system. Deep breaths.
So.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, you got to take him seriously. I mean, yes, a bad conference record, but still 20th in pairwise. I mean, that's obviously not where you want to be, but it's within spitting distance at least. And those overtime results that they've been able to get have been helping them in that regard, because you're getting some points against North Dakota. You had that full win at Magnus, which is nice for them, their best win of the year. And so, St. Cloud saw them already, played out in Omaha in December. Were able to win and high officially. That was a shootout loss, I believe.
Loss, correct.
And I think the only shootout that they've lost this year in St. Cloud's St. Cloud season, which, as you said, back to the Motzko days, those were few and far between in his tenure for the Huskies.
It was like 4 years before we got a shootout victory with Motzko,
or even like a shootout goal.
Yeah,
not even getting goals scored in any of those. But now they're can't miss. So, but we've familiar with the team. Latkozy, we think solid goalie. Again, his season's taken a bit of a dip the last 2 weeks. 6 goal efforts for Denver, both nights last weekend. He's just sitting at a 90 save percentage himself. And so, but you can't look at the stats.
Oh yeah.
You got to look at the eye test.
Story.
You don't know the full story. So I mean, there is some credence to that. I'd probably take Latkozy over Person, but I guess I'm playing into the my argument. But he's a goalie that can steal you a game, and we've seen guys like Bob Mueller having a good year for them. We got, again, it's the Lutkeys, not the Litkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared to be confused and be on your toes. Be on your toes, Brian Mose, because you're going to have some Lutke challenges this weekend.
Shenanigans.
Because there's 2 of them for Omaha, and they're both pretty decent. Jack Randall, he's kind of their big goal scorer last year, not having as good of a year this year, but still someone that is definitely talented. They don't have a ton of depth. I mean, they don't have the top line that North Dakota has. They certainly don't have the top 3 lines that Denver has. But they're still a team that can be dangerous. But being on home ice this weekend for the Huskies, seeing how well they've played really the last 3 games in comparison to Omaha, who's lost 3 straight to these same 2 teams that St. Cloud has played. But those games really weren't as competitive as the games that St. Cloud was involved in. I feel like St. Cloud, especially if you really want the Penrose, which I'm not really obsessed with. I mean, yeah, I'd love to finish first place, but it's a trophy they've won before. I'm more just concerned just getting the tournament, the NCAAs. That's really the main thing for me. But if you any pairwise aspirations for not being able to capitalize with a full win over the last 2 weekends against Denver and North Dakota, you really want to keep those hopes alive. You really should sweep Omaha this weekend. Now, am I confident in that? No. I mean, again, I'm the least confident that I am in the goaltending position, even than I was probably in October of this year. It just, this last few weekends, he's been exposed, and whether or not that is a part of him trying to overcompensate for some kind of loosey-goosey defensive play, either way, those units, one or both, need to tighten up in order for the Huskies to really kind of inspire my confidence back in that unit kind of being the driving force of this team. Right now, it feels like it's they're more of a forward-based 5-on-5 speed, good passing, playmaking team. That seems to be more of the identity of this team than this sort of solid back end that can generate offense over, through transition game and Anhorn being a rock and all that. Feels like the identity's kind of shifting towards the forwards this year. Not saying it's good or bad. It's just kind of a surprising development. And it's more so how loose I think the defense has been. That's more surprising than the forward stepping up and being a pleasant surprise, which they have been. But I don't know. This will be an interesting weekend. I have my sights on 6 points. Where are you? Are you as dumbly confident as I am?
I feel not as confident. But always predicting a sweep is tough because I think Omaha is better than what their record is, but I do see like a 4-point weekend. So I do think a majority of the points is going to go to St. Cloud's way. I think we get back in the win column, and then some type of overtime result. I don't know if it's going to be an overtime victory or whatnot, but I think one of the games is going to be a little bit closer than one of the games is going to be a little bit more towards St. Cloud's favor. Because again, I like overall how St. Cloud's playing. And so I'm not too concerned. We control our own destiny at this point. So I think like this is the series to really put it all together again and, take it to a team that's been taking it on the chin as of late. Omaha doesn't have a good power play. It's sitting at about 15%. Their penalty kill is at 78%. Like this is the type of weekend to try to right the ship in some of these little areas that aren't clicking on all cylinders. And I think we can do it. But just something tells me that they might sneak up one of these games and it might be a little bit of a tie. We'll have to get to overtime for it. But the main thing is make sure that we, really help that comparison for the pairwise is winning that head to head. And as far as the pairwise concerned, being 1-0-1 against them, being 2-1-1 if they get an overtime win over there as well. That's still going to be huge in that comparison fight, and keeping us above Omaha, like, cause you said they're at 20. So as far back in the standings as they are right now, they're, these are still very good pairwise points to get and really up our percentage right now and making that NCAA tournament, which I think right now sits at about 56%.
Yeah, it's certainly, the season is definitely far from over.
Yep.
Any fans that are thinking of jumping the ship, that's a little too early for that. Yep. I think if they take less than 3 points this weekend, I might be jumping in on that lifeboat with you. But
I'm not jumping in on any lifeboat. I will go down with this ship. I am Dido here.
All right. Well,
so.
We shall see. I'm excited for this weekend because I feel you play like you did against North Dakota, you'll beat Omaha.
I think so too.
But they're still a team that can sneak up on you too. And so take them seriously and, I don't know, get the job done before you go out on the road for a couple of games, a couple of series. It'll be, I think, a nice weekend that restores some sanity and some confidence in Husky Nation. I'll be that optimistic.
Perfect. Sounds good. Anything else, men's college hockey, kind of around the nation, that kind of piqued your interest? Kind of one of the big things that I saw was New Hampshire. They took a little bit of a stumble down in the pairwise, which, less Hockey East people in the picture is going to be a good sign for St. Cloud. But they were sitting at 11, dropping down to 16 over the weekend. It was kind of a big dip for them. Providence kind of slowly on their way down as well.
They're settling into their 4 seed where I expect them to be.
They're Providence.
These Hockey East teams have to learn not to schedule Anchorage at home in January because they torpedoed Lowell's here last year with the same kind of. They actually swept him at Lowell, and a 4-0 loss at the hands of Anchorage at home for Providence ain't going to look good on their resume. Hashtag Arizona State, who lost again to Augustana. Chase Brand, I think, a couple of goals in one of those games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're seeing the Hockey East regression to the mean kind of taking place here. Massachusetts also kind of teetering on the brink right there with St. Cloud, sort of on the bubble. And so yeah, it's, I mean, we also mentioned in conference, I guess the only one we didn't mention, well, we did mention CC sweeping Miami. Those games were fairly tight, the Friday game at least. And then Western Michigan splitting against Duluth.
Yeah.
And that's 2 weekends in a row. Like Western lost to Miami last weekend, but they're like unchanged at 10. Like these losses aren't hurting them at all. I don't get them. They're 15-6-2, but they're 6-6 in conference, which means they're 9-0-1 in non-conference. But it's Ferris F and State they have the one tie against them. Ferris F and State's like, I think, second worst in pairwise. They're awful. Bowling Green's in the 60s in pairwise. You got 4 games against Lindenwood, which you had to sweat out one of those, miraculously win one of those, and then St. Lawrence, another bottom 10 team. It's a terrible non-conference schedule. It's leading me to think that, like Woden, those guys would say, you can go 5-5 against a really good non-conference, or you go 10-0 against a terrible non-conference. It all washes out. I'm starting to think that's not right, because you feel like Western Michigan isn't as good as a number 10 in pairwise would suggest.
Yeah.
But it's their losses it's just Teflon for them. They seem to be well positioned. It just seems weird to me. But yeah, it's so you mentioned North Dakota up to 3 in pairwise. It'll be a big weekend this weekend. We've got a 1 versus 2 matchup with BU and BC.
Yeah.
And then also that North Dakota and Denver series, another top 10 matchup. Actually got a third top 10 matchup with Michigan State hosting the Gophers. Also got Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan had a big win against Michigan State, but then Michigan State came back to split that series on Saturday. So Michigan kind of made a bit of a move. I think they were 15. They're up to 14 now. Again, right by St. Cloud's area in terms of RPI. So it's all really tightening up, especially at the bubble area. But it should be a very interesting weekend this weekend with some marquee matchups on the docket.
Yeah.
So it's a fun time of year.
Did you have Long Island putting up a 10 spot against Stonehill? I did not. Better goal margin than the Michigan.
Great.
So that I found was interesting. And on the weekend, only giving up 2 goals, where Michigan gave up 5. So get Long Island over to Yost and see what Long Island can do, right?
Oh, don't tempt them, because they'll go ahead and do that. I wouldn't be surprised if they already have them on the schedule for next year.
Good old Big Ten. Good old Big Ten non-conference. So
this is where it really comes for Stonehill. I mean, they got road games at Lindenwood this weekend, but then it's their 6-game homestand.
Yeah,
that's really the Custer's last stand here,
against the 2
you got Long Island, you got Lindenwood, and then you got the 2 D3 teams. So we're gonna know a lot. Stonehill ain't gonna touch a road win this year, but it's those 6 home games. We're gonna see if our prediction that they're gonna run the table here.
I don't like their chances against Long Island.
I mean, if they're losing 10-0 to Long Island in hockey, that's not a good sign.
Not a good sign
for winning sports.
So so let's switch over. Switch over to the women. End up winning on Friday, 3-1 victory, and that saw Himlerova and Katie Kaufman, 1 shorty, 1 power play goal, and then Suriel, who's had a really good season as a freshman, 12 points, 24 games. She gets a goal as well from Gentry and Millwater. Able to get 3-1 victory. Dominated on shots on goal. kind of eased off the gas, I think maybe a little bit in the third period, but at the same time, they were able to kind of weather it when St. Thomas was able to get that goal back to make it a 1-goal game. But, we were able to stretch it out, get that win as expected, as we should have at this time when we have these expectations now, when we're battling for home ice. Then we go to St. Thomas and we got Ahola in net, and kind of a uncharacteristic stat line here for Ahola, giving up 2 goals on 13 shots, but 3 goals against to the empty net. So the empty net actually more goals against than Ahola, but it's another instance of, again, only 18 shots total for St. Thomas. We were able to really lock it down when it comes to possession. Taylor Lind gets the goal in the first period, but not able to extend that lead. And Olivia King for St. Thomas, their goaltender, was able to keep it close. And again, our lack of goal scoring really hurt there, and we stumble and we give up some points here. And I just don't, and I'm not going to say we're dead, but essentially home ice, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's not over. It's certainly still in the realm of possibility. I mean, you are literally in fourth place. You still have a 3-point lead over Duluth. The fact, though, that, I mean, because Duluth got swept this weekend at Ohio State. And so they've 0-4 against Ohio State. St. Cloud has a win against Ohio State, and they'll be playing the Buckeyes this weekend. With the schedule, because St. Cloud's they're done now with Mankato and they're done with St. Thomas, Duluth has 1 series each against Mankato and St. Thomas left. They're done with Bemidji. St. Cloud has 1 series left against them. So, I mean, in terms of Duluth's got 1 extra series against the bottom 3, whereas St. Cloud has 1 more against the top 4. The schedule has to favor Duluth, even though St. Cloud has the lead. I think it's still going to come down to the head-to-head. Like, if you can win a majority of the points in Duluth, if in St. Cloud's series in February, that might be enough. But
I don't know.
I mean, we didn't expect.
I think we just need a little bit more help. We need Duluth to stumble a little bit more, because
they would need to lose one of those games against either Mankato or St. Thomas as well. They haven't done that this year yet, but they've not had as many quality wins either. They have the 1 win at Wisconsin, but St. Cloud's got the win at Ohio State. They've got points against the Gophers. So, I mean, it's all shakes out that St. Cloud has a slight lead now, but it's not over. Like, after the loss on Sunday, I was like, that might be it. Their pairwise is they're down to 9th.
Yeah.
It's not cratering them at this point. And the fact is, you still have the time and the schedule to make up that ground. This starts the second gauntlet for this team. And you basically do it in reverse order, best to least good, because you're going Ohio State, then you're going Wisconsin, then you're going the Gophers, then you're going Duluth. 4 weekends back to back to back, most of which on the road. You've got these 2 games at home against Ohio State. The other 5 of the other 6 are all on the road.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's going to hurt.
It's not going to be easy, but again, I said you take points in half the games against the top 4 teams. If you do that, you might need like some actual wins in there rather than just like some overtime losses or whatnot. This digs you part of that hole by dropping this game to St. Thomas, as well as the game against Mankato last weekend. So maybe like 3 wins and 1 overtime win. That'll probably do the job. But again, that also might mean that you're 5th instead of 4th. And it might come down to how you're how you're doing in the first round of the WCHA playoffs, because that's going to be a big key in terms of who's going to be an at-large. Is there going to be 5 teams out of WCHA, or is it just going to be 4 most likely? If it comes down to 4, it's going to be whoever wins the season series between St. Cloud and Duluth, and that's likely going to be a 6-game series, if not a 7-game series, because you're going to play in the playoffs. Someone's going to host the other, most likely in the first round. So now, so I'm just saying, you laying the scenario that St. Cloud can make up the ground. They certainly can. It's not like they're playing in the New-Ha, where they don't play teams ahead of them. They can't really make moves in pairwise. They certainly have that opportunity. It's just looking at not only the loss on Saturday, but the win on Friday, which, that was a tight game. St. Thomas had that penalty shot attempt. It was a big turning point in that game because St. Cloud scored the second goal right at, shortly thereafter.
Right after. Yep.
And so that game could have gone either way. Inability to put these teams away. Saw it again last weekend against Mankato. We talked about that. That's the more troubling thing for me. Like, from the pairwise perspective and the standings, it gives me hope. But the eye test of watching this team just, again, throughout the whole year, and especially since the second half has started, we're just struggling to come up with offense. And if we can't score more than 4 goals on a weekend against St. Thomas, does that give me a lot of confidence that they can beat Ohio State? Not really. So it's possible. And they played a game in Columbus not too long ago that if they do that again this weekend, it's certainly possible. You win a second game against Ohio State, that'll probably make up for that St. Thomas loss.
Yeah.
But you got to keep going. It doesn't end. Like, you can't just get one win against Ohio State. You can't stop there. So the task just gets that much tougher. And maybe this is a team that thrives on adversity and needing to always sort of motivate themselves. Maybe starting that second half of the year, like, you're playing these 2 teams that you're better than and you should beat. Maybe that's an unfamiliar spot for St. Cloud to be in. Now they're in a more comfortable spot as the underdog against the likes of Ohio State. Maybe they can step up. I'll tell you this: I don't think Ohio State's going to underestimate you like they may have in December. They're playing pretty well. Right now. Didn't give up a goal against Duluth this last weekend. That's on the heels of them going into Ritter and just steamrolling the Gophers. I guess the one benefit we saw, like with Duluth, was able to keep the scoring down for Ohio State. They just put up 4 goals this past weekend. And St. Cloud and Duluth are similarly built teams in terms of very good goaltenders and kind of offensively challenged. So if they can maintain the sort of game plan that Duluth played this past weekend, as well as St. Cloud when they were able to win in Columbus a month and a half ago, it's certainly possible, but it's going to be a tough test. And the way that this past 2 weekends really have progressed, it doesn't strike a ton of confidence in me, but I'm still going to watch. I still think this team has a good chance. Yeah. I mean, it's not over. I'm surprised they didn't fall further in the pairwise actually after that loss, but it's certainly not over. And this team can right the ship here and start playing their best hockey. They played their best hockey in the first half when the schedule toughened. So if they can if that can happen again the second half, then this team can make some noise, and hoping to see it happen.
Yeah, I hope that this is kind of maybe a wake up call or a like a message that you got to really kick it into high gear here, because not only is that schedule, like you said, incredibly tough, but in February, 7 of the last 8 on the road. And I think that's going to be a big kind of factor when it comes down to it too. At Wisconsin, got a home and home against Minnesota, at Duluth, at Bemidji. So it's, those 6 points that you left on the table against Minnesota State and St. Thomas. I mean, that's what's really coming up to really bite you here, and that's what has me really worried about going on the road here next week, or for the playoffs against Duluth. So, but it'll be fun to kind of watch this team, and hopefully, Ohio State is incredibly just firing on all cylinders right now. So, this is the time when, that Adolski kind of defensive poise can really cause some fits. This is a good weekend for that to really turn up and give the Huskies a chance at getting some points this weekend.
You're mentioning like what would have been like if they had taken care of business, swept both Mankato and St. Thomas, and both winnable games. The St. Thomas, both of those games are basically 2-1 games. I mean, that's what the Mankato game was, and St. Thomas was 2-1 until the empty netters started piling in. You win those two games,
I will credit Adolski just going for it and just leaving the goalie out. Just being like, what are you going to do? Lose 5-1, 6-1, 7-1, whatever. Keep it rolling.
A loss is a loss.
Yep.
Pairwise doesn't take in fact the goal differential, so why not? But yeah, you win those two games, you're a point behind the Gophers for third place, and you've got a 9-point lead on UMD. And so that would be a big difference, because you could, go into this gauntlet and have a couple of games in hand that you wouldn't need to run the table. And you could lose a couple of these games and still have a cushion over Duluth. But you can't play the what if game at this point. It's just sort of hope I hope at the end of the year we don't look back and the difference was like the St. Thomas loss, because that would be a bummer. But
I don't know if we have women's hockey as the ability of the customizer.
Do we have a customizer? CHN doesn't have it on their website.
No.
So we'd have to depend on us, Joe, which good luck. Whenever you're in the position to be dependent on us, Joe, say a prayer. So,
yeah, you click the current pairwise for college hockey news on the women's section, and it just brings you to the standings.
Goes to the men's. Oh, it just okay. I thought it was going to.
No, just goes. Doesn't even try to give you any type of pairwise. It's like, no, here are the standings.
Woden, I know you're listening. You got a bug. Fix the bug.
Anything else around the women's landscape that kind of caught your eye?
What else we had? So we had Wisconsin sweeping Mankato. I thought the first game was a little tight. Caught a little bit of that. Minnesota sweeping Bemidji State. No surprise there. So in conference, I mean, other than St. Cloud losing to St. Thomas, it was essentially chalk. I mean, Duluth's a top 10 team, but going up against Ohio State wasn't terribly surprising that they got swept. Didn't really catch much of the out of conference action. I mean, we still got the usual suspects up there with Colgate and Clarkson, Quinnipiac, all positioned pretty well. And then a clump of teams just right on the bubble with Cornell in the mix, and St. Lawrence, Princeton even. It's, I think, going to be a slug it out battle between those two leagues as far as if there's a parity between those two in the at-large spots, because it does look like the other leagues are all going to be single bid leagues. So it's one of these leagues going to get 5 and the other 3, or 4-4 seems the more likely outcome. But let's see how it plays out. I know they got the women's bean pot going on this week, the first round games. So we got that time of year. We got bean pot.
Oh, that's right.
Smelling the beans on the horizon. So frustrating weekend, I think, for the Huskies, but I think they have the opportunity. Certainly have the opportunity. Can they step up and get the job done? That's the more interesting proposition. And I did want to mention too, we've been dogging on Stonehill the last couple of weekends.
Credit where it's due. Yeah.
And yeah, for good reason. But we would be remiss if we don't mention on the women's side, St. Michael's putting up an impressive 0-26 year in the Newha. And you mentioned Stonehill losing 10 rip to Long Island. I mean, St. Michael's has an 11-0 loss to Franklin Pierce on their resume. And so they haven't scored more than 1 goal since December 1st. So, and in the Newha as well, 0-20 in that league. It's impressive, is what I'm saying. Keep an eye on that, because we might have a winless season on both the men and the women's side, which I would say it's got to be a first. So I always like those historically. It's what the common man says it. You either be historically good or biblically bad. And we've got some biblically bad teams, and it's always a shutout there. And I mean, from their perspective too, that's Common's right, because we're not talking about Post. We're not talking about Assumption, who are just middle of the road bad teams in the Newha. I had to bring up St. Michael's because I saw their 0-26, and that's worthy of some of my benediction. So good on you, St. Mike's.
How do they have... Oh, okay. They went to overtime once. Okay. I was wondering how they have
did. To Stonehill. To Stonehill.
Which I thought actually, when you talk about, talking about Stonehill, I thought you were going to bring up the fact that the women in Stonehill, a very respectable 13-13. So 13 and 7
they're right there in the Newha.
So they're right there in third place. Very streaky team. They had a stretch where they won 6 straight, followed that up by losing the next 5. And right now they're in a stretch here where they won, 5 of their last 6 and 6 of their last 8. So streaky team. The Stonehill, Skydivers? What are they again? Sky Kitties?
The Skyhawks.
Skyhawks. There we go.
Skyhawks.
So...
Yeah, Long Island in first place in the Newha. They got the first auto bid for the league last year, and then got smoked by Wisconsin, I believe. And they're leading the conference now. St. Anselm's right behind them, but Long Island seems to be the best team in that. But hey, don't sleep on Stonehill. The Stonehill women, at least, are a competitive. They're an actual team, so we can give them that credit.
Which I don't think the men's team is the real team. I think it's just maybe like a figment, or I don't know. I
mean, you put them in D3, they'd probably be a bad D3 team.
Yeah.
Like below 500 D3 team. So, yeah, let's watch them this weekend. They got Lindenwood.
Now, do they have a bid? Just have an option? Like, if they would have qualified in the pairwise, would they have been to the tournament?
That's a good question.
Or is that just an anti-St. Thomas / Augustana thing?
I think it's a case-by-case basis, and teams that move all their sports up, that's where you run into ineligibility question marks. I don't remember. I remember having to look that up with Augustana, and they are eligible to make it. They're eligible to make it pairwise based, but they can't get, because they don't really play in the CCHA full time. That's right. They don't really play in the CCHA. They can't get in through the CCHA auto bid, but they can make it technically through through an at-large. But that's not the case, obviously, with St. Thomas. They can't make it through the pairwise, yet they can win the CCHA tournament, but they still can't play in the NCAAs. It's a weird and kind of dumb system.
But is what it is. Also, as far as one last thing that I want to bring up for the women's side is just kind of, how obviously we focus here talking about Ohio State, Minnesota, Wisconsin, whatnot, Clarkson right now, they're 3 in the pairwise, right behind Colgate. But Clarkson is only one loss on the season, and that loss can overtime to Cornell,
Right.
Which is also a strong team. So it's kind of interesting that Clarkson.
You said that they're behind Colgate because they beat Colgate in their only game so far. 1-0 win at Colgate.
Yeah, according to the Us Show pairwise, Colgate is 2, Clarkson is 3 in the pairwise.
I bet you. I mean, Colgate's got that win against Ohio State, who is number 1. I bet that's like a main driver of that.
Probably.
But good teams. I mean, that I would say Cornell or Clarkson would be my pick out of, like, if we're going to have an Eastern team make a final this year, which I still probably think it's going to be an all-West NCAA final. I don't know. Do you have an opinion about Clarkson v. Colgate in that battle? Or Quinnipiac, or none of the above?
I mean, the Clarkson Colgate
I've seen a little bit more Colgate.
It was a 1-0 battle.
Yeah.
Colgate actually had the edge on shots, 35-24. So it's, it'll, I don't know if it will be an all WCHA. I guess it also kind of depends on how the brackets align.
Yeah.
Especially with 11 teams making it. So it's kind of a weird numbers game on how the bracket is aligned, and everything along those lines. So, but I do like, we might be in an instance where, both those 2 teams are able to make it, and then the other 2 WCHA teams in the Frozen Four. So,
or it's likely probably going to be 2, because the top 4 seeds get home ice. They'll host those regionals. Hosting campus regionals, a topic that we'll talk about in a little bit. They do that on the women's side. They
do that on the women's side, but it's not good enough for the men, apparently, to do it that way.
Right.
That's Woden's Wonders, or segment.
We'll get to that. But from the women's perspective, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to get 2 of those 4 top seeds, 2 of those from the WCHA, 2 of them from the ECAC. So it might come down to, can a WCHA team beat a ECAC team on their home ice to go to the Frozen Four? Which that's what happened last year. Wisconsin had to beat Colgate in Colgate, and then they ended up winning the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So if there's a team that can do that, it's just like, can Minnesota? I don't really like Minnesota's chances to make a deep run. And if they're going to be a top 4 team, which I doubt, then you maybe got, so they potentially could be a road team in one of these ECAC rinks. I don't know if I would see them necessarily popping an upset, but it can certainly happen. I guess we'll see how it all shakes out.
I agree. Speaking of, should we just go into the Schlossman Woden Showdown?
Let's do it.
Battle of the pundits, I guess we could say.
Don't we have a sounder for this? It's like the commentary on the commentary. I think I've got a sounder for this. This is a perfect place for that. So we'll hunt for that and insert that.
Time now for the commentary on the commentary.
Discourse. That's exactly what we got. We got some discourse.
We got some discourse, indeed. Battle of the ideologies when it comes to regionals. In one corner, Brad Schlossman, whose favorite eatery is Chipotle in St. Cloud, wrote a column in the Grand Forks Herald, just pretty much his points saying why the NCAA tournament needs to go back to hosting on campus regional, and pretty much his ideas, and not even regionals anymore. So first and foremost, let's get that out of the way, is that we're not, hosting, 4 teams on the drop of a hat going to fill in the blank school to try to host all games. But it's just, adjusting all of the formats and adjusting the tournament to go on the road. for some schools, and just strict pairwise 1-16 going up against each other. Higher seed gets the host, one game per weekend, and then next weekend is the next round. So that's kind of my
which
thought.
would also be on campus sites. So he's saying the first 2 rounds
correct
would be on campus sites hosted by the higher seed at their campus rink in a one and done.
Yep.
Until the Frozen Four, which would proceed as normal in a neutral site, predetermined year by year basis. So Frozen Four untouched, but the first 2 rounds would be all on campus. And then in the other corner, we have Woden, whose argument is basically just keep it the same.
Yeah. It was really funny because,
site.
I've got the news alerts, for like whatever your interests are. You can set up your news alerts for CHN. So right when that commentary came up of, keep it the way it is, like I was like, oh, this has got to be Woden's article. Like right away, you knew who was going to be writing it. You knew exactly what it was going to be about, what his points were. So it was just kind of like, yep, of course he would. So here's the thing.
It's a good debate team tactic. If
you've
got one article on one site, you take the opposite. You don't just write another article that's completely in favor of the previous article. You got to go against it. You got to push back, create a little controversy, get some clicks.
Yeah. Get those Temu ads. But it was definitely one of those instances where it's like, oh, Woden saw an opportunity and he sure is going to take it. That's for sure.
He pounced on him like North Dakota, like Blake pounced on some bad turnovers from
a Peart turnover.
Right.
So,
and it wasn't like he has some minor differences. Like his thing is, well, I wouldn't want a host school in one of these regionals if they were a 3 or a 4 seed to host. So like we can only have them be at that regional if they're a 1 or a 2 seed, which seems like logistically challenging and kind of not. It's like a half measure, if anything. And again, I can see the perspective. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. I mean, we've talked for years about how we prefer the Schlossman approach, and I will, give props to him that the article that he wrote was sort of a nicely condensed version of all of our separate rantings throughout the years. So all sort of, and it just nicely formulated arguments that I think were concise and convincing, and it was a well-written piece. Now I'll kind of put on the Woden hat and assume the position of why not? Like, what's the argument against going back on campus? Because I think there are some legitimate concerns with that, or at least there's positives in the camp of being neutral site regionals. For me, it's like I feel it's stupid to keep them as they are currently. That I think it's so clearly been a broken system for decades now. Keeping it as it is, where there's 4 hosts, and you have the opportunity to have teams like Providence, who, yes, aren't technically hosting the regional, but it's in the same city, and they are a 4 seed and they're hosting a 1 seed with a partisan crowd to their advantage, which just, it belies the whole concept of neutrality and fairness too.
Yeah.
Like that's what we hear about the neutral site crowd is this is the most fair way. It's unfair, especially for smaller schools with less resources, to have to go into a big boy blue blood campus rink in a playoff situation and feel like that you're on an even playing field. But when a team like Providence can sort of maneuver its way into quasi hosting these regionals and getting that advantage, but without earning it through the play, that's, I think, what gets some fans riled up. I remember years ago kind of joking, if you really want neutral, just put them in Hawaii. Like, that's like the true neutral. But then I kind of thought about it a little bit more. Like, you don't have to go to Hawaii. But I'm just throwing it out there. Again, my real heart is I would just go back to campus. But if you want to really throw a bone to the neutral site crowd, try neutral sites, but try something completely different with neutral. How about not 4 regional sites, but like 1 regional site? And I'm thinking it's like Los Angeles. It's got to be a big metro area, something that's suitable to accommodate 16 teams and their fan bases and media and all that accompanies that. So just hear me out. So you got like a city like Los Angeles venues. I mean, you got the Staples Center, you have the Ducks Arena. We're really not doing NHL rinks for regionals, so those are probably out. Couple of AHL rinks in that area. There's Ontario, which is in suburban LA. That's an AHL facility, about 10,000 seat arena. There's also Long Beach. It used to be an AHL facility. It's equipped for hockey. They don't really play much hockey there anymore, but it's about like a 12,000 seat arena, I think, for hockey. That's right in the LA metro area. I mean, they got a ton of decent, like the Kings have their practice facility. The Ducks have their practice facility. We're playing a regional this year at the Blues practice facility. So if practice facilities are on the table, you got a couple of those
that's true.
In that area. So that would at least satisfy the neutral aspect of it. That's not near anyone. I mean, Arizona State, Arizona State's about an 8-hour drive from there. Other than that, everyone else would have to fly. So, I mean, obviously the costs would be more, but it would be a neutral site. There would be no shenanigans of Providence hosting as a 4 seed or not hosting, or UND like doing their Fargo thing and just packing the building with green. It is a true neutral site. Woden spent a lot of time about the whole growing the game argument. Aren't we supposed to grow the game in the non-hockey markets? I mean, California's kind of been rumored as like, hey, we should have some hockey teams down there, maybe bringing a marquee event. This isn't just like a mid-season tournament, but, it's the regional round before the Frozen Four. Plus, you have the benefit of if you're in the top 5 or 6 of pairwise at this point in the year, you could book your ticket now to the regional. You wouldn't need to know where that was. You wouldn't have to guess a week before. I want to go to the regional. Hey, and I want to go to sunny Southern California. I'll book my ticket to go to the regional because I've got a pretty good chance that my team is going to be there. So there's no guesswork as far as where the regional is going to be. You could do this. You could set it up for, we're going to do LA for 3 straight years. So come this time of year, people are already booking their regional tickets. It's a sexy venue or area to go to just vacation wise. And it would be a marquee hockey event as well. So you could have and it's something where you do it regularly. So it's not like a surprise. You could build a bit of a tradition if it works. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sort of half baked on this. But
I actually love this idea. And I think you solved it, because not only that, but now that you have that extra day in there when it comes to the regionals, I mean, it's 2 games on Thursday, it's 2 games on Friday, and then 1 game on Saturday, 1 game on Sunday.
I mean, you probably would need 2 facilities. You could get away with it with 1, but I think you would
2 facilities.
I think the best would be 2 facilities.
Yeah, but like you could buy a package then to all of the games. So even if it's
or at least if there's like 2 sessions, like you have like 2 brackets going on.
Yeah,
maybe you have a full package for 1, or you could get like a package with all the games involved. It's possible. Now, as far as attendance goes, like last year, like the total attendance for all of the regional games was like 46,000. Now, a lot of that it's per session. I think the average per session was like 5,000. There's more complex math that I can't do on the fly. We're not shooting for 46,000 because some of those are repeat. So I don't know what the exact like unique butts that went in seats during the regionals. I'm not sure what that number would be, but we're probably not going to get something that's as close to what it was in the previous regional structure. but it might be worth it to try it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this might be a terrible idea and it might fall flat, but I feel like the current setup isn't really working either. And why not try something a little bit different than what we've been doing, which is not like the creative ideas that we have now are, let's go to the Blues practice rink. We haven't been there before. It's a new quote unquote college hockey market. And it's quasi neutral. I don't know. I feel like, and playing in a tiny facility, that seems like doesn't sound like a progressive move if you're trying to improve the regional either atmosphere or revenue or whatever sort of your goal is to go to Maryland Heights this year. I don't know. You feel like if you have it all in one central location, you have an attractive place to go that people want to go. You have it where there's no guesswork as far as quick travel within 3 or 4 days. It's possible. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but just try something different than what you're doing now is what my big thing is. Do you have a better idea than that?
I mean, if we're going to keep all the neutrality, no, I don't. I think that's a really good idea.
And again, my thing would just go back to campus. But if you're hell bent on neutrality, try something better than what you're doing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even if you do, there's a lot of maybe places if they want to test out prior to giving them a Frozen Four.
Right.
As well, kind of different markets and whatnot. No, I think that idea is a winner. I think that's my favorite idea.
It would have to be a major metro because you couldn't do 16 teams in
Topeka.
Right. But like Los Angeles, Seattle be a good one. Tampa. I mean, you've had good success at the Frozen Four when it's been at Tampa. Why not try to do a regional down there? Again, we're saying regional. I'm just using that as the term of art, like just the first 2 rounds before the Frozen Four is what I'm saying, what I'm meaning when I'm saying regional. Yeah. But you'd have to be big, like even like Dallas, Fort Worth, something like that. Like, and these are all, again, areas where there's no college hockey presence. And if that could spark some interest, like I have heard that Southern California, there's it's where the Coachella Valley AHL team plays, that arena. They were like looking into maybe doing an in-season college hockey tournament. So I think there's some interest in that area to get some college hockey action there. Why not try for something like this? Obviously, it's probably a pipe dream, but fun to speculate. And that's the one thing I like about at least the Schlossman and Woden pieces. I mean, it drives a discourse. It gets people talking about it. And I like that idea. It feels like with Schlossman's piece too, that the Overton window, so to speak, of having some change in the regional structure is kind of slowly happening. I mean, based on his reporting, there's more and more coaches that are in favor of going back to campus or at least changing the current setup.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's in the last few years, especially, has changed. And so I feel like there's some change afoot, but I'm not overall confident that things are going to shake up. Certainly not to the extent that I'm proposing with my LA super regional idea. But I just like that the conversation is out there and people are talking about it, and people care about wanting to put the best product out there, whether or not how you're clashing ideals of neutrality, fairness, attendance, atmosphere, money, all of that. Like, there's going to be winners and losers out of that, and there's no real perfect solution, but I think we should try something new.
Well, that was the thing I think Woden just didn't address, was the money aspect. And I thought Schlossman's article did a really good job of just flat out saying, judging by the reports, this would make more money for the NCAA. And you can say all you want that it shouldn't be about money. Well, sorry, it is. It's the NCAA. So, the fact that Woden didn't even address that point of it or didn't even counter it, it is kind of a big stickler to whereas this system isn't working. It's not putting in the dollars for it. And, getting Western teams to bid on hosting a regional anywhere is tough because, again, it's a minimum of $100,000 investment for colleges to essentially guarantee that your team would be placed there. And, not a guarantee that you'll get your money back or that your team is going to make the tournament. That's, as we have seen, that there's only a handful of schools that are able to do that out west, and especially that we don't have the venues, necessarily for it. Now, if it keeps bouncing back between Sioux Falls and Fargo, maybe there's, that's something there. But those are really the only two. And if they're going to keep rotating, I mean, I guess you could have both of them host as well, but it's, I don't know, just not addressing the money aspect, I think, was kind of the biggest part of that.
And some factual errors. I mean, he had mentioned, like, the neutrality is great. That's why the men's and women's basketball tournament does all neutral sites. Women's first round has been on campus for like the last 7 years. And why did they move back to campus for the women's first round of the NCAA basketball tournament? Because they didn't draw attendance in the neutral sites. And even the
which might change the way women's basketball is growing, but at the same time,
right,
our attendance isn't growing in college hockey.
And I think you've mentioned this, the 12-team football playoff next year. The first round of those games are going to be on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the only two sports in NCAA that have all neutral site tournament games is men's basketball and men's hockey. Because as we mentioned, women's hockey doesn't, they're on campus for the first round. Baseball, which I always thought is the best comparison to NCAA hockey in terms of popularity. Because I think, like, the hockey, they got in their heads in the 90s that we have to copy basketball. They got it in their head, like, we've got to copy the March Madness, which I don't know if it ever worked in the 90s. And it certainly is not working now. But certainly at this point, now they're the outlier.
Yeah.
And yes, the men's basketball tournament is a unicorn. You can't replicate that. And hockey is kind of dumb to continue to insist that it's trying to replicate that. Because again, you're playing in the Blues practice rink for one of your regionals this year. If that doesn't spell failure, I don't know what will. I don't know. Maybe we should hope for that to just sell out and be gangbusters. But for something tells me that's not even going to draw half of the capacity that it holds, which I think is like 2,500. It's another one of those funny arguments people always bring up. Hey, Union, if you go on campus, Union, they only seat like 3,000. They can't handle a regional. They can't even handle a first round game on short notice. It's like, well, we're playing a regional in a facility that's like 2,500 capacity at a practice rink. So I think Union could probably handle a first round game against whatever, Northern Michigan, if they ever make the tournament again. But yeah, so it seems like there's some that still kind of cling to what is now a fairly old fashioned and out of date idea. Again, if we're hell bent on neutrality, we see what happens. We see what works with the Frozen Four. And so I'm not saying that can never be successful, but just the current model seems to not be working. I'd favor some change there, if not just throwing our hands up and saying, let's go back to the old system. But it's a topic that comes up every year. I'm sure we'll talk about it more as this year's tournament approaches. And next year around this time, I'm sure there'll be another round of articles to go around and start the conversation all over again. So I'll see what sort of crazy idea I come up with next year. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that it's just for fans. The current system is so hard to attend a game, and even exemplified, by adding an extra day between. So now you have to find out, what to do for an extra day in Sioux Falls. Sure, it's a lovely town. I'm sure it's a lovely town. That plenty of art and culture there in South Dakota, where you'd be able to find something. But it's you know I get the aspect of who knows if it's a guarantee that it will sell out for a regional, and who knows. But at the same time, at least it's something of a step where it's easier for the fans to get to those games. Because like me, I'm not going to be buying a ticket to a regional no matter where it is if St. Cloud makes it. Maybe Sioux Falls, but I'm not going to know until
you went last
Sunday.
year. Did you go? Did you just go to the regional final?
I just went
or
to
did
the
you go to the
final. Yep.
Okay, so you went to the Gopher game. You didn't go to the Mankato game.
Yep. And I was just lucky enough to get tickets off Ticketmaster at that time. I didn't even know where my seat was. I just saw 2 and I was like, yep, that's it. Obviously it's a small enough arena. It didn't matter, but yeah, that's
not going to be an every year thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just too short notice. And I think that was a Thursday.
It would have been a Thursday, Saturday. So the Gopher game would have been a Saturday. Yeah,
exactly. So Thursday, I had to work. I mean,
because of Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been on Friday if it wasn't for Bob. So maybe that enabled you to go to the game. Would you have gone if it was on a Friday night and on short notice? Like, could you have taken off work and
gone
up there on a
probably
Friday?
Could have made it work. But the big reason was because my parents were able to babysit and take the kids for the night. Which ironically, they were there on Thursday. So my parents actually went up to the Thursday game against Mankato. And then, they were able to,
so it worked out well
for
the Weldies.
It ended up working well. Well, I mean, not the game by the end of it.
No, but the attendance, the regional.
Stupid. Yeah. I blame Logan Cooley, but, and then also he was just like, the pairwise is a good system, but not good enough to determine who gets a huge advantage like home ice. I thought that
wasn't a terrible point, except why is it a good system to select the top 16 or however
exactly.
many at-larges there are? How do we trust it blindly to spit out the best number of at-large teams, but we can't trust it to differentiate between 8 and 9? Which I agree with that point. I think it is kind of silly to say that was 8 and pairwise and that was 9, so that means the 8's better than the 9. And at this point, that means the 8 goes into the 2 seed band and the 9 goes into 3 seed band no matter what. I think that's pretty silly. So I agree with that point, but I would extend his point to say, why are we trusting it to select the entire field in general?
Yeah.
But
it's kind of that moving goalpost. And I don't know how big of an advantage, like the thing about home ice that, the biggest advantage you get from that, at least in my opinion, and from what I see, is more so about lineup and line matches, which you still get if you're the higher seed anyway. In a neutral site, getting that last change is kind of a bigger aspect, I think, than, it's louder, or
is it literally like the pro neutral site folks? Is it really? I'm asking honestly. Is it that playing at the Ralph is an inherent advantage than North Dakota hosting at Shields and Fargo? Like, is that a huge difference in terms of quote unquote home ice advantage? Whether or not, yes, I know if Shields is in their home rink, is it that much better that they're not at the Ralph in terms of advantage? Aside from any money, because obviously you can sell twice the amount of tickets if you're at the Ralph, just put that aside. But is the fact that that's neutral, that is not where North Dakota plays its games.
Andrew is
that
doing
like a
the
selling
air
point for
right now for our listeners.
I'm asking honestly, do you think that that's like they think, yes, that's better than them hosting on their campus rink?
100%. Yeah. I think that's what their argument is.
And I guess I don't really buy that.
No, I don't either. But
well, again, we're in violent agreement yet again. In violent agreement and against Woden. So
I don't think that.
I guess that means we're in violent agreement with the North Dakota beat writer. So I guess the enemy of our enemy is our friend. So
I mean, I'm not in agreement with Schlossman's assessment of North Dakota. So I guess
I think that's part of the argument too, that those that want to stay neutral, I think a lot of it, they just think in their head, we're giving North Dakota an advantage because we think that they're going to be in the Ralph. It means being in the Ralph in the NCAA tournament, which if you look at North Dakota's recent history, they wouldn't have hosted too many of these first round games the last couple of years. So it's not like, I think that's the big boogeyman, is they think it's going to be Michigan and Minnesota and North Dakota hosting all these games. It's like, do you guys realize Quinnipiac's been like number 3 in the pairwise for like 20 years now? Like, they'd be in the mix, and Union has been a top 4 seed.
It's not the week to say
St. Cloud has been a 1
just
seed
dropped
overall.
To 8th this year.
They took one on the chin this weekend, but they'll be back.
But at the same time, like, as a college hockey fan, I would love to whoever matches up against Maine. I mean, like, Maine hosting a tournament would be really fun to watch. So like you said, like, I don't know. It's I like the idea, like, the current thing, what we have right now, like you said, isn't working. I just, like, I don't know who.
According to us, apparently there's a lot out there that are just fine with it. So.
Who wins? I don't even know who wins. Like, point to a school that wins in this situation, in this setup.
It's mostly, if anyone does win, it still is the Blue Bloods, because they're able to put in bids to quasi-host these regionals. Exactly. Penn State can say, well, we're in Allentown and we're calling it the Midwest. Hey, it's not at our campus facility, so it's neutral. Wink, wink. Northern Michigan's not able to do that.
Yeah.
Mankato's not able to do that. So I guess the people would say they are. Mankato just put a bid in for the X. They can host it. Like, all right. You are true. That's correct. They can. Do they want to? Clearly not, because they haven't. We haven't played a regional at the X since Ferris F and State.
Don't say it.
But
I was going to say, the only team that wins is the Atlantic hockey team that plays St. Cloud in the first round. Who cares where that game is going to be at? It hurts even saying that. Anyway, let's move on to questions.
Yes.
TJ Selvey, how will we react when we win the regular season championship? We win the Penrose and somehow miss the NCAAs. And it's the gif of Pedro Pascal laughing hysterically and then crying. I don't think that's
possible.
Going to be possible. It was almost possible in 2013.
Yes.
Where we were on the bubble and we did win the McNaughton Cup that year. Well, we were co-champions, I guess, technically, but we were the number 1 seed in the WCHA that year. And we were firmly on the bubble and kind of had to sweat it out. And then we ended up making a run to the Frozen Four. If we win the Penrose, we're clearly going to be in the tournament.
You'll
like right now, like when we're, like I said, even right now, we're hardly buried. So there's no cause for panic right now. Especially with how we've played lately. So I think that,
maybe it's possible. I
don't see
I'm trying to think, like, you would have to crap out in the first round of the playoffs. That would mean losing to Miami 2-0 in the playoffs. But, like, being first place means you're fending off North Dakota. Yes, you don't play them anymore, so I guess that's possible. But then you're probably beating Denver at least once. That's going to help you out. You're doing you're taking care of business against the Omahas, the CCs, the Miamis. So you're not really having a ton of bad losses.
Yeah.
Because either Denver or North Dakota would overtake you in the standings. So, I mean, maybe that, like, if you win it by a point, that might get you to 10, and then you crap out against Miami, and that drops you to 12 or 13, and then you have some upsets in the conference playoffs. I mean, it's possible. I think unlikely, though.
Yeah.
I think it's unlikely that St. Cloud wins the Penrose.
I mean, that's also true. I mean, but
I think it's more unlikely that they win the Penrose and don't make the NCAAs.
I mean, even if we go through, we got, like you said, Omaha. I mean, that our next opponent, and they're sitting at 20. So
and CC's right there too. They're like 19. I think they're ahead of Omaha in the pairwise. I mean, really, the only dog. I mean, even Duluth got up to 24.
Yeah, they're at 25. Yeah.
So the only dog is Miami. I mean, again, shocker.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
everyone else is top half of the pairwise.
Yeah, Western Michigan sitting at 10.
Sitting at 10.
Denver. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think we're gonna be fine if we just take care of business. It feels like SCSU is under a lot of pressure to get as many full point wins from here on out as possible, especially after not getting one against either Denver or North Dakota to start the second half. Am I wrong to feel that way? A little bit, yeah. I think you're wrong to feel that way. I think you have the right to feel that way, but I think you're wrong to feel that way, if that makes sense. Just because, yeah, full point wins, and especially like we let those games slip away from us. And I agree with that. That's frustrating. We hit this swoon the same time last year too. We still got points out of a lot of those games. But like if you were going through and we got 6 points out of 12, if we split both those series, I wouldn't have batted an eye any different. We got 4 out of 12.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were looking for as far as can they rise to the challenge, at least like split these 2 weekends. And they didn't get there, but pretty close. I guess I'll go a little bit more with the questioner. Like, it's different than last year's February swoon where you had built up the equity where you could afford to tumble a little bit. Or now the margin for error is if you do something like that in February, you're not dropping from 3 to 10, you're dropping from 12 to 19.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? So I think there is a bit of urgency more than there was last year, but that might help them. Like the fact that will focus the target and the goal a little bit more. The fact that they don't have any room for error. I mean, let's hope. That's what I'd love to see. Like taking care of business the next few weekends. Like, yes, please.
Yeah.
And again, I was impressed with enough of how St. Cloud was playing, especially on the offensive side the last couple of weekends, that I feel like they can take care of in Omaha. I guess that's what we'll find out this weekend if I'm right on that prediction or not. But I'll go a little bit sky is falling. Like you just you keep running. I'm thinking of a Bob Seger song, but I can't. So just keep on trucking. That's the Temptations.
That's the Chevy commercial.
Or that's Keep on Trucking's a Grateful Dead song.
Yeah.
I think there was a Temptations song called Keep on Trucking too. Anyway, just win, beat the Omaha team.
If you win, it'll.
Yeah, win and you solve all problems. A lot of people get kind of like I was listening to the KVSC guys on Friday, and they were telling me about CC's in Miami, and boy, St. Cloud would be benefited if CC won that. It's like you just hold off on the opponent's scoreboard watching. Just win your game in front of you. Like some people get a little obsessed with the opponent's reflection of the pairwise implications. Like if you're really obsessed with that, you're going to lose focus of what's really in front of you. I think just win the schedule that you got in front of you, and that should do wonders. If we got to rely on the 0.0001 margin of RPI points in order to make the tournament,
special.
Duluth's the only team that gets that kind of ass backwards luck. So don't hope for that.
So, and then his follow-up was, where does the intensity meter go if they split with Omaha? It's fine if we split with Omaha. I do think we're going to get the lion's share of the points, but even if we split with Omaha, I still think it's fine. Again, they're 20th. I mean, they're not terrible. They're not buried in the pairwise. I'm more concerned with how we look in those games versus what, if we only split. If we get less than a split, though, something else is going on. I just want our special teams to be better.
Yeah, both power play and penalty kill.
Yeah, exactly.
Power play has been real bad lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like the St. Cloud women's.
Only one goal over Denver and North Dakota.
I think there might have been 2 in Denver. Not many though. And in terms of the chances, like 2-man advantage late in the game on the Saturday Denver game, and a lot of those like golden sort of opportunities have been by the wayside. And a lot of like the North Dakota power play goals this weekend are quick ones.
Yeah.
Within 10, 20 seconds of the power play. So it's even worse if you calculate it by minutes or seconds in this case. But yeah, like I said earlier in the show, it's not going to sink you. It's like the women's team where this St. Thomas loss didn't sink you per se. You're still right there in pairwise competition, but it's just more, it makes the future task that much tougher. So again, a split versus Omaha isn't going to kill you, but yeah, like you said, how do they play in that scenario? If it's a terrible loss where you're playing poorly, that's one thing. If it's a kind of steal win from Omaha, good goalie, and that's another thing. But yeah, it's not going to kill you, but I would really like to see a sweep this weekend.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be disappointed in a split. But
do you think if Western Michigan stays up where they are, but have like they finish 5th or 6th in the NCHC, like they're going to come up with like a Lindenwood rule, whereas like if you play a notoriously bad team 4 times in non-conference play, like 2 of those wins get thrown out or something along those lines.
All 4 of those wins might not really count in pairwise. I mean, Lindenwood is 60th. Yeah, 60th in pairwise. So I don't know if that is so low. Well, again, that's not even Lindenwood is the 3rd worst team that Western has faced this year, because Bowling Green's at 61 and Ferris is at 62. I mean, terrible non-conference schedule. St. Lawrence, the other one, that's the best of their non-conference. They're 53. At 53.
Yeah.
So it's possible that they don't even factor any of those into the pairwise. I don't know how low it needs to go
for them to just take that out. We're all getting Ferschweilered.
Maybe that's the thing. Like, you play them that bad. Like, you just play Stonehill 10 times in your non-conference. That way they just won't count. So the only thing that counts in your pairwise is your conference games.
Won't get Wisconsin ruled that way.
They wouldn't, but it would sort of, from a pairwise perspective, it would be like they're basically 500. I'm surprised they're as high as they are.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Maybe I'll look into more of the comparisons and see what's going on there. Dan Jacobson, friend of the show, as his Bulldogs are surging right now. What is your Oscar front runner? And I've only seen one movie, I think, that's nominated, and I saw Barbie, and I
saw the other one, the Oppenheimer.
The
Oppenheimer.
It
was called The Oppenheimer.
Is it really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yep. Yeah. It's like the Ohio State. It's pronounced the.
Gotcha.
It's not just the. It's like it's got like a trademark thing going on there, because he was the Oppenheimer.
He was.
So
well, sure enough, learned something new. Well, still the same. Now with the Oscar, I don't know much about anything else, and I don't know, but I would say Oppenheimer is going to take a lot because it is a World War II period piece. So that usually kind of gets your Oscar Academy mojo rising, so to speak. So
World War II era, like it's not a war film. It's
Okay,
a science
fair.
biopic. But I get what you're saying. Period piece in that era is 3 hours long.
Yeah.
It's pretty good bet.
I
did see circling back, I watched all 3 of the Mighty Ducks films.
Oh. All right. And
speaking of Oscars.
And
Oscar
get Joshua Jackson that Academy Award.
He in the third
if he would have
one,
got his recognition from the Mighty Ducks and from Fringe, he'd be halfway to an EGOT.
That's right. And I don't even know what Fringe is.
Fringe on Broadway, and then you get your Tony, and then have, spoken Fringe.
He has a spoken word album for a Grammy, and
a novelization of Mighty Ducks. Show. He can be a narrator.
In the third one, he just becomes a little biatch. I don't really like his character turn. Kind of becomes like he's not a real good captain. Like he's just kind of a, come on, coach. He hated the Jeffrey Nordling character, but I think that was the second time I'd ever seen the third one. So I'll say, like, the first one is never going to be confused for a Best Picture winner.
Wrong.
But it's a film. It's an honest attempt. It's a decent, crowd-pleasing, somewhat realistic film. The second one, from frame 1 to the end credits, is a cartoon, and it is camp all the way through, and it's ridiculous. I was surprised at how it was so bad. I like the third one almost better than the second one because it's not as quite as ridiculous as the second one. But Bombay turns into a clown. Everyone is just a clown in the second film.
For kids who want to coach. Those sneakers.
So bad.
Okay.
And then go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, okay, so came out in 92, so it's the 93 Academy Awards for Mighty Ducks. And
what are you looking at, snubs?
Do you know who won Best Actor that year?
Oh, that was Pacino's Scent of a Woman. So that means that category is wide open.
That totally means that Bombay could have made some headway in or Emilio Estevez. You could have had him up there as a nominee.
Sure.
So
he said with not quite a straight face. I don't think he was snubbed for D2. And I was surprised at how much he is in D3. I thought it was just like a single scene cameo, but no, he's first billed. And he's got like 3 scenes, including like he comes back as a lawyer to like win a court case to reinstate their eligibility. I will give it the D3 credit. It got one legitimate gut laugh. I totally forgot this. It's like the beginning of the movie where it's like the dean of this fancy schmancy prep school. And they're like looking in his office. It's Eden Hall. So I think it's like a mishmash of like Eden Prairie and Cretin-Durham Hall.
I think it was filmed at Cretin-Durham Hall.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was. But it's like the dean's office, and the team is like looking around, and he's got like these framed photos, and they're like, "Oh, look, the dean's a friend of Wayne Newton," and it's actually a photo of the dean with Newt Gingrich. It's like I didn't expect Mighty Ducks to have topical humor involved here, but it actually got a legit laugh for me. But that was about it. From there. From when from Coach Orion came in and he was preaching, you're going to learn how to play defense. And then their first game, they blow a 9-0 lead in the third period, and he retains his job. Then it sort of lost me a little bit, but still it was an improvement from them beating Trinidad and Tobago and Iceland, vaunted international hockey power Iceland at the Junior Goodwill Games. A little bit more believable in that regard. But I had some fun making some old friends watching those films I'm glad that Jason Bryan brought it up, and I'm glad that I was able to relive the ridiculousness that is the Quack Attack.
Sure enough. Quick correction that I have to make here.
You done messed up, Aaron!
It was Shattuck. But
that's where it was filmed.
It was filmed
like their ice rink too, which had, should say, worse lighting than Magnus at that rink, because it was all like pitch black through the entire film.
I think actually it was the ice rink was filmed in Fridley, but like the school scenes were at Shattuck.
You're talking the third one.
Yeah.
Because I think the first one, I'm going to say it was New Hope, because they had NH. You could see NH on the side of the rink. So I think that's where the first one was filmed. The second one was, I don't know, Arrowhead Pond, obviously, shooting on location at the Goodwill games. But yeah, it's like I said, the first one is mainly grounded in reality, and yeah, it's not a great film, but enjoyable, and it does what it does fairly well.
Yep.
But you start with the second one, and to the end where they're singing "We Are the Champions" around the campfire, and then they pan around and Tibbles is there singing along. It got me so good. I was doubling over in laughter. It's a solid ending to a film.
Speaking of Jason Bryant, he did it is Pequosin, is how you pronounce where he's from, and it's an Indian word meaning great marsh. It's in the Virginia Beach area, commonly referred to as the Hampton Roads. So not Appalachian.
So like like Atlantic, Chesapeake Bay kind of area.
So
if Chesapeake, I don't know, Chesapeake Bay might be like Maryland, but I think that's in general mid-Atlantic region.
It was I want to hear his side of the story too, about why his audio went out a little bit during the Friday game. So that was what
funny. Was it like? So you were in the building there, so it was like how long was it? Did that span like 10 minutes or so, or was it more than that?
It was about 10 minutes, yeah. And
so no, I mean the refs couldn't pipe in anything.
Nope.
No PA, no music. Obviously, was this kind of weird?
Without
we're kind of used to that sort of white noise with like the between the whistles kind of music, but you had none of that.
Yeah, it was a little bit awkward there, but
I bet.
So,
let us know what you did there. You spill coffee on the PA system, Jason Bryant?
Do you have to jiggle the handle to turn it back on? I think that was probably the issue. In your opinion, what does the record have to be to realistically for the remainder of the schedule to be in the tournament? Again, take care of business. We could probably split the way out and we'll be in the tournament.
I think you got to do better than that.
I mean, I hope you will, but
so
we're at 13. I mean, again, a lot of that also depends on, is Hockey East going to get 6 in? ECAC, if they're going to have only the auto bid, and that's Quinnipiac. If they take 2 spots, that's going to, so there's still a lot of that.
You got to think 14 and up, because CCHA and Atlantic Hockey are both getting just 1 team in.
Yep.
So that narrows it by 1. Generally, we're only thinking that with Atlantic Hockey, but CCHA's faceplant this year, that bumps up the cut line. So you got 12 games in regular season: Omaha at CC, at Miami, versus Western, versus Denver, at Duluth, and then you got the playoffs and potentially the XL. So anywhere from 14 to 17 games until Selection Sunday. And 8-8, as you're saying. Let's just say they play 16. They don't go to a third game in the playoffs. 8-8 would put you at 19, 15, and 4. I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Yeah, you're right. That might not be enough.
I'd say let's get 10 wins. You can even count overtime results in that. Get to 21 wins versus what you got. I mean, you got, as you mentioned, these Omaha and CC games, like they're right 19-20 in pairwise. Those, if you win 3 out of those 4, it's good results. You maybe win a majority of points against Western. I mean, you swept them already out there. You win a game against Denver. I think it's doable.
Yeah, very much so.
So,
and especially
I would say you got to do better than 500, though. I'll put the bar at that.
Yeah, that's true. But you have Omaha, obviously coming up at home. CC on the road, that's going to be tough with how they're playing. At Miami, should be 6 points, but sometimes Miami is a thorn on our side for some reason. We'll have some head scratchers there. But, earlier this year, we were able to, it was a 3-2 win against Miami before, coming back a 6-rip victory. So,
and with CC too, I remind you, have not lost a regulation or overtime win since 2013. It was the WCHA. So it's been a long winning streak for the Huskies out in CC. Now that doesn't mean squat, but recent history would tell us that they do fairly well out there. The altitude does not affect them out in Colorado Springs.
But at the same time, those CC teams were very bad.
This is true.
Whereas right now they seem to be kind of on their way up.
Certainly better than they have been.
But
so that's not going to be a pushover.
Western Michigan, who we both think is overrated, that's at home. Denver at home. So I mean, the bulk of our tough schedule,
Duluth,
quote,
not with the rabbit's foot up their butt this year, seemingly. So it's right in front of you.
Yep,
go
exactly.
and take it.
So just take care of business. And then was there one more? What have you thought about the men against top 10 teams, 10-ish teams? Seems to me fast teams like DU and North Dakota has given us struggles, but we found ways to dominate stretches without scoring that much. Do you see adjustments being made in time for the NCAAs? Yeah, like I think Denver is a much faster team than North Dakota, and especially on the forecheck. And I think that's where maybe sometimes Denver gets caught a little bit with their defense, is because they like to push the play so much. But I think that's where St. Cloud has a lot of trouble when they are being pressured so much by the defense in the forecheck. I mean, Dominic Bassi took a penalty against Denver. So it's, that's where I was surprised that North Dakota kind of hung out in that 1-2-2 trap so much, where they didn't really push the play. And, I think Huskies, their breakouts and everything, and we're able to enter the zone fairly easily at times 5-on-5. Sometimes during the power play, we like to turn it over for some inexcusable reason. But, I wouldn't say that North Dakota was that much faster than St. Cloud, but they were just a lot more opportunistic. And I don't, as far as like skating wise, I don't see there's a lot of, I guess I'm not too concerned about it in that aspect, because even against Denver, for a lot of that series too, I think we outplayed them. Maybe outplayed them is a little bit harsh, but like we were right
even
with
the Saturday game.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, top 10 teams in pairwise, Huskies are 2-2-2. So having 4 points, getting points in 4 of those 6 games. Actually not too bad. That's probably a reason why St. Cloud is still within the pairwise gate.
Yeah.
Is good results against those top 10 teams. Yes, the 2 wins are against a Western team, which we've spent like 20 minutes this show saying how overrated we think they are. But, and And in the 2 losses, really only one of those games of the 6 against these top 10 teams that we're considering were you really outclassed, and that was the Friday game at Denver. And really, that one was just the second
one
period, really.
Yeah.
And so I can take the something out of that, yeah, I think you were able to hang with them. It's just not being able to finish. And as you said, North Dakota capitalizing on opportunities more so than the Huskies were able to capitalize on North Dakota's mistakes burns you for this last weekend. So the top 10, the record versus the top 10 is probably a plus in their resume. It's the getting swept at Mankato and the St. Thomas and Alaska losses. Those are the ones that are hurting you at this point.
Yep,
so,
exactly.
And they'll continue to hurt you. But you can't do anything about that at this point. All you can do is just go out and take it.
Yep. Just to bring it all back, just turn the page.
Right.
So that about does it. This episode. Thank you all for listening. You can find me at Twitter at More Clappers, MOAR More Clappers. Andrew
at greenground.net, and also Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. Can send me an email as well, and I'll send you one back.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Until next time, go Huskies. Woo!